When you look at the Republican Party in Washington right now, which seems very determined to pursue its agenda, to stand up to President Obama, do you think they're on a kind of winning path? Do you think this is the right way to go?
No, I think they're misinterpreting this election. This election, everybody suddenly didn't become a Republican. They were just saying, Obama's gone too far to the left. This stuff is happening too fast. It's too much big government. And I think the biggest mistake Republicans can make is just standing up and saying no to everything. You know, I guess they'll have to go through the drill of we're going to repeal the health care, but most Americans don't want the health care reform repealed. They want it improved. They want it changed. But they feel basically there were some changes, basic changes that needed to have been made in it. And if Republicans just say we want to do away with it, and after that we're not going to talk, go through the motion, do it. The president will veto it. You won't get a veto override, so they can put that behind them. But this idea that compromise is somehow defeat is... actually, it's the antithesis of the way this country was founded. I mean, our founding fathers had very, very real differences, and yet they understood they were about something bigger than themselves, and they found those compromise positions that gave us the Declaration of Independence and ultimately the Constitution.
So this week, the Republicans have managed to extract concessions from President Obama on something they seem to care very deeply about, which is the extension of the Bush tax cuts. Now, what puzzles me about this is the whole idea was we were very concerned about the deficit, and we have now passed a set of tax cuts. When you add in the concessions made to the Democrats on unemployment insurance and payroll tax cuts, is going to cost $900 billion over the next 2 years. I mean, this doesn't seem to me very concerned about the deficit.
Well, what they'll argue, and they're not wrong totally in arguing this, is that by keeping taxes low, you will encourage more investment. You'll encourage business to invest more. Because we certainly saw it in New Jersey when I cut taxes. You cut taxes, people do spend. People do bring jobs back. The problem was that they will say the problem was what they had to give on the other side in extending the unemployment benefits. But compromise is what we're about, and we're going to have to find our way through it. It's going to be very interesting to see what the new members... You have 50% of the Republicans in the next Congress will be new, will be freshmen. That means a very narrow or shallow reservoir of institutional understanding, and coming in with an idea that what we're going to do is say no, we're not going to spend. And the reality is, yes, you are going to spend. I mean, this is government, and government has services that it has to provide. Is it overreaching? I would argue yes in many areas. Is it spending too much? Is there waste? Of course. But you're going to end up spending, and how they're going to balance that. I mean, are they going to close down the government every time and just do continuing resolutions for budgets? I think they'll find that that's not an optimum way to proceed. So it's going to be interesting to see how they balance precisely what you're saying, this desire to show that you want to keep taxes low with a focus on reducing the deficit. And I don't know that you can do it all on supply side, but that's where they're going. And it does work to a degree, certainly.
But you have a deficit now that's 10, 11% of GDP.
It's getting more to a point of...
It seems difficult to imagine you could get this all out on the cost on the spending side.
I don't think you will be.
So if you have to raise taxes, will this? You just described these new Republicans. Could you imagine them agreeing to any kind of tax
increase? No, they've gotten themselves in a very difficult position. Many of these people have signed that no new taxes pledge, and you've seen it in the states where they've done it, and then they don't dare. Because if they do vote for any kind of a fee increase, it's considered a tax, and they find that they're being opposed by some very strong groups with a lot of money behind them who will attack them in the primaries and go after them.
Do you think that, looking forward to 2012, that Sarah Palin is likely Republican presidential nominee?
I don't know as likely. There are a lot of people who are vying for it. I could certainly see a scenario under which she becomes it. I mean, she's very popular in Iowa. She's very popular in New Hampshire. You roll up good victories in those two states, and then you start to see your way through to the end to get the nomination. But, you know, there are a lot of people that are going to be vying for that. Mitt Romney's out there working hard. You have a whole bunch. What, every congressman and senator right now thinks they can be president.
What does it do to the Republican Party if Sarah Palin does get the nomination?
I don't think she'll win nationwide, but she certainly will. When she went on the ticket with Senator McCain, she energized the base, but the base isn't big enough, and Republicans should have learned that. In this last presidential election, John McCain's election, you had over 2 million self-identified, born-again Christian Republicans, pro-life Republicans, who voted in that election, then voted in George Bush's re-election. So we got them all out. The base all came out, and we still got our heads handed to us. So you can't just rely on that narrow base. You've got to start competing for the center. And so far, I haven't seen a lot of outreach on the part of Sarah Palin for that. She's more concentrated on that base and energizing them, which is fine, but it's not going to win you a general election.
Would you support her?
If she were the Republican candidate, she'd have to show me a lot more than I've seen thus far as an understanding of the depth and the complexity of the issues that we face. I mean, I don't know her personally, so I can't comment on that. I mean, she was a governor, but the fact that she left office before even completing her first term is it's just not an attitude that I think is necessarily in the best interest of your constituents, rather what's in your best interest.